Alrighty, y'all. Hello and welcome to this video where I think we're going to have a lot of fun. I know I am going to have a lot of fun with this one because I've never seen this website. I'm surprised I haven't, but I'm definitely glad that we're going to be taking a look at it. This is right up my alley. I think it's going to be very fascinating. And, well, we're looking at car sized, which basically you can look at. Seems like a lot of different cars and compare them. You get real like specifications. I think it's in metric, right? So that's perfect for most of you watching. For me and any fellow Americans, my apologies, but I think we can manage. I think it's all right. But it's cool because we can compare cars, and of course, what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna take some very common, great selling, very common to see on the road cars here in the U.S. and compare them to, I guess, typical European cars, which, of course, it's hard to narrow down what everyone drives. Of course, everyone drives something different, but I think you get the point. We'll take some, famous cars from European countries that are probably pretty common to see. And I'm also going to base some of the American cars on what I've driven because I'm just a regular American guy. I will throw in some of the cars I've owned before and see how they compare to, a regular European car. I think this is going to be really fun. So let's jump right into this. So we're starting up with a matchup of one car I always talk about on this channel, which would be a Ford Crown Victoria, of course. I have the Police Interceptor version, of course, because you can get decommissioned police cars pretty cheap here, although they are going up in price a little bit because people realize that they're really great used cars and they're super reliable and all that. But anyway, if you've seen any movies or music videos or anything, these are so common in the US and Canada, especially, this is like a North American icon, right? And they're very, very robust, heavy duty, and reliable. Body on frame, beast of a car, right? This is my daily driver, right? So this is perfect. And for the European entry, we have a Renault Clio. So I feel like that's a pretty common car. I remember seeing like best-selling European cars for, I think, like this year, last year. And I think this was on the list. It was definitely something from that brand. I think it was a Clio. So remember, in lots of videos and stuff, I think we've all seen same thing. For Europe, lots of hatchbacks, right? So I think this is a fair choice. Now, if we look at them head on, you can see a clear difference. Like, look at the Crown Victoria, right? Really different. I mean, way bigger, right? It is 23.1 centimeters wider, which is kind of crazy because this isn't a truck or some big work vehicle. This is just a regular American sedan, V8 rear-wheel drive. Look at how much bigger it is, of course, than the typical Clio hatchback, right? This is a 5-door. And I imagine this has a 3-cylinder or a 4-cylinder. Of course, in a Crown Vic, you're going to get an 8-cylinder. And, it's going to be fun. It's going to be a nice car to drive, but it's definitely going to be worse on fuel mileage, of course, and emissions and all that stuff. But the real difference comes to the side profile. Look at this. Look how big the American car is, right? This is a very common daily driver, very common taxi, police car. Up until recent years, of course, they've moved on to newer vehicles now, but you could see the difference. This is kind of crazy. Like, I knew we had big vehicles here, right? Seeing it like this is different because, of course, in your head, like, I knew a Crown Victoria is bigger than a lot of European cars. I knew that. Seeing it actually visualized like this is fascinating. Like, look at how long that Crown Victoria is. It's crazy. If you swap them, it just totally hides the Renault. You can't even see it at all. I mean, that is actually crazy. Oh yeah, the Crown Victoria is 132.3 centimeters longer, 5.385 meters long, while the Clio is 4.062 meters long. And then, if you want some detailed stats of everything, there you go. Some of them are missing for some cars, and that's okay. But yeah, you could see like cargo volume, you're going to get a lot more in a Crown Victoria. But considering how big it is versus the Clio, I'd say Clio still has a decent amount of cargo room. Obviously, it's bigger. You can see that. But to actually think that it's almost 900 kilograms heavier, that's crazy. Of course, I thought it would be heavier, but not that much heavier. That is a crazy difference. So this is just like the first matchup, which are basic, readily available, very common to see on the road vehicles, right? All right, now this matchup is pretty interesting if you ask me. I'm taking this from kind of a family perspective. So we're thinking like two parents, one or two kids, maybe three kids, okay? And you, of course, have your family car, right? You can't be driving like a little Corvette or a little Fiat or something. If you have a family, you need something a little bigger. And that goes for any continent, right? You could tell me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I feel like either small SUVs or I guess like estate cars or station wagons, combis, whatever you call them in your area. I feel like that is pretty common in Europe. From what I've heard, in European countries, you have like a wagon, right? And then here in the U.S., those aren't nearly as common, unless it's a Subaru Outback. Here, everyone loves to drive Suburbans and Tahoes and GMC Yukons. We've been one of those, right? We've had multiple Suburbans before and a Yukon, Denali. And let me tell you, they are hella big SUVs. And let's just take a look. There is, here, let's swap them. You can't even see that there's a Skoda behind this thing. Can't even see it. So there's the Yukon, and there it is behind, and you can see the European family car in front. That would be a Skoda Octavia wagon. I feel like this might be plausible, like possible for a European family car for some families, possibly, right? I feel like it's reasonably priced. It's a nice car. By the way, I love Skodas. If you're, a fan of my channel, you probably know that already. But yeah, there's no denying that it's totally different than your family car here in America. Because here in the U.S., when we go to school to drop off our kids, right? I mean, you're seeing tons and tons of big SUVs like this. That's what you're seeing. Yukons, Tahoes, Suburbans, Ford Expeditions, Jeep, Grand Cherokees and Grand Wagoneers and Toyota Sequoias, all these big SUVs, right? So there's a Yukon versus a Skoda. I thought it was absolutely hilarious. The GMC is 103 centimeters longer, which is absolutely crazy. It's also 41 centimeters taller. If we look at the rear matchup there, I mean, it's kind of ridiculous, right? I gotta say, I love learning about different places. I'm really embracing it. I think you guys know that about me. I'm very open-minded, and I love learning about new places and would love to travel to a lot of these places as well. But I'm still, an American guy, right? Like, I haven't lost that completely, okay? I like the big SUVs. It's just how it is here. It's normal. Ingrained in me, like most Americans, this is what I'm surrounded by all the time. Not the new ones, by the way. I will say they're extremely overpriced. These are way better to buy like a 10-year-old used one because these are generally pretty easy to maintain and cheap to fix. I feel like this has still got good cargo room. It's going to get, insanely more fuel mileage, right? The fuel mileage is going to be incredible on this compared to the GMC, right? Now, I think these Skodas come in diesels as well. If we're talking about a diesel station wagon like this that can hold probably 5 people, it can hold some decent cargo as well. You can put a roof rack on this and put even more up there. I mean, this is a serious player in, a road trip car, in a family vehicle, a daily driver, kind of all of the above. I feel like it's going to be pretty solid, right? And honestly, and you can even tow with these as well. So that's what I hear. You never see it towing here in the U.S. You would be using something big like this. But honestly, when you go to toe to toe with these things, I feel like this could kind of hold its own, right? It could kind of go better than people might think. And that's what I think is kind of cool. And it's just funny to see that different perspective, right? Like how gigantic this GMC is versus the Skoda. I think it's actually kind of funny. But yeah, the GMC comes in at 24 centimeters wider. Let's see if we do have some stats on here. So the cargo volume, obviously you're going to get unbelievable cargo volume on the GMC, but it's going to come at a cost, right? This Skoda is probably reasonably priced. This GMC Yukon, it shows a Denali. I don't know if it's using that as a price or not, but this is going to be literally like an $80,000 or $90,000 US dollar purchase, brand new. That's why I would never buy one. I think that's way too much. They've gotten way too expensive. Kind of trucks and SUVs have in the past 5 years or so. All right, and then I want to talk about another car that I own. I know it's weird. Americans own a lot of cars sometimes, like me. So another car that I have is, of course, the manual car. I've had in a video about manuals, actually. Manual transmission, which I'm very proud of because that's like a super rare thing here in the U.S. for some reason. But yeah, I have a manual transmission Saturn Vue, it's called, and it's about 20 years old. And it's a great car. I love it. Just drove it earlier. It is considered a compact SUV here. To me, it feels like a car, right? It doesn't really feel SUV-like. You know, it's got a little bit of ground clearance, but it's pretty small. For the U.S. standards, this is seen as a very cheap, small, not desirable vehicle, right? Because everyone loves big, fancy stuff here. Now, I'm a weirdo, and I like it, but yeah, it's not your run-of-the-mill American car. But by the early 2000s, which that's when this car is from, Saturn basically rebadged a lot of like Opels and stuff. So this car is kind of like European, if you think about it. A lot of Saturn like borrowed stuff from Opel and uses, random parts like from GM, obviously like Euro GM, like Opel. It uses like I'm probably saying it wrong, like a Getrag or Gertrag transmission. The manual is like a German transmission, for example, and it has like a 2.2 liter 4-cylinder. I guess pretty small for an SUV because I'm used to SUVs with like V8s, right? But of course, it's a small SUV. So if we compare this to like a common small SUV that I've heard of that people talk about a lot in Europe, I went for a Dacia Duster. I feel like that's one of the best-selling cars I've heard. It is a small SUV, and let's see how that compares. Actually, wrong screen. There we go. So we have the Dacia in front, which this is, of course, newer. But as you can see, somehow it's actually smaller than the Saturn Vue. My Saturn Vue is in this exact color, by the way. This is actually a Vue Redline, which is like the sporty one. Mine is a total base model, so I don't have any of these ground effects. Mine actually looks like it's a little bit higher up with smaller wheels because it's like a base model. So if you picture green with like unpainted bumpers, literally, like it doesn't even have painted bumpers. Yeah, this is funny. I just find this crazy that this is super small by American standards, like one of the smallest SUVs you could have bought in 2004, and yet it's still bigger than a newer, because remember, cars over time have gotten bigger and kind of bulkier or like swollen looking, right? Or bloated, maybe you could say, even in Europe or basically anywhere. And this Dacia Duster is still smaller than the Vue by a little bit. And I just found this extremely interesting. So that Saturn is 26.4 centimeters longer. If we look at the front, I guess this is where that newer design kind of takes place. While the Saturn is longer, you can see that the Dacia looks more bloated, right? It looks more full. It looks wider than the Saturn does. I actually love the look of older cars for this reason. A lot of people here can't stand this car or don't pay attention to it. I tend to think these Saturn Vues look pretty cool. They have like a retro look to them, and they kind of look sporty in their own way. I like them. If you don't agree, that's fine. But you could totally agree that the Saturn looks a lot more slim and I guess like simple, right, than this. This just is like not a bad looking car, because for new car standards, I wish I could buy this. I would totally buy a Dacia Duster. I feel like it'd be a very nice, simple, reliable daily driver. But if we're comparing, I do like the look of the older Vue here better. The newer cars just kind of have that swollen look to them, and it doesn't always work the best. Let's go to the rear though. Again, you see how the Saturn looks more chiseled and more just, I don't know, it looks more unique. And then if we go to the actual numbers, let's see, okay, a Saturn's on the right. So the Saturn, being 20 years old and a super small SUV for the US, is still bigger than the European one, which I just, fits the bill, right? Is that everything here is bigger. So yeah, looking at all the numbers, the Saturn's bigger, taller, has a lot more cargo room, actually, which is a little bit shocking. At the same time, I do think it's incredible that you can get a Dacia Duster, which I've heard great things about from people, for 12,000 euros. I think that's incredible for a new car. All right, and finally, as you can see, a real quick one, Believe it or not, even if it's families or even like a single guy, I was guilty of this, you will see just regular people. Maybe they don't have a family or a lot of kids or anything. It could be just a couple or like a single lady or a single guy. Having a pickup truck is like as American as it gets, right? And people love to go all out. They love to buy big, heavy duty pickups, even if they're not using it for towing, even if they're not running a business with it, which of course that would make sense, right? No, some people just buy big trucks to show off, right? To have fun, to go off-roading, to make it look crazy, with the lift kit and the crazy wheels and the crazy, wraps or whatever. That is very, very American, and I see it every day I go out. I mean, there's totally custom trucks being used as daily drivers all the time here. That is totally normal. I'm guilty of it. I used to have a huge Ram Power Wagon that I, technically didn't need, of course, but I daily drove that. And I wasn't using it, to run like a big towing business or something. Just wanted a big truck, and I had one for a couple years. So we have that. We have a Ford Crew Cab Super Duty, something you would see every day here. And we have like a car you might see every day in Europe, which would be like a Fiat, right? I heard Fiats are very popular and sell well, so we have a Fiat 500. Look at the difference. This is actually crazy. I can see like single guy in Europe driving this. Single guy in America driving this. It's like two different universes. So, 208 centimeter difference. Let's look at the front. Yeah, a big behemoth, like a tank, literally, and a little Fiat. Look at the rear. That's crazy. I feel like the difference would be even more exaggerated in person for some reason, but I think the site is really cool. I feel like it gives you a great visual, right, with the numbers to prove it as well. So, 23 centimeters wider, basically front and rear. Yeah, and let's see the weight difference. I feel like they're underrating the Ford. I feel like this Ford weighs even more than that, but even using this number, it's literally over twice the weight. Are we surprised? Of course not. I've been told to check out the site before. I'm glad I finally did. It is insanely fascinating. I feel like I could be on here for hours. I'm kind of impressed at how many cars there are. We're definitely going to take a look at this again. And, there's a lot of cars I could learn about that I don't really even know about. And that's a theme on this channel, right? There's so many different cars and car manufacturers that we don't really have here in the U.S. I would love to keep learning about. I just find it, very fun and educational. Is there bigger cars in Europe that we could try and find here? Of course. And is there, small cars here in the U.S.? Of course there is, right? But it's not normal, right? There are people that drive extremely small subcompacts here. It's just so rare. And, to say that the average American drives that would be wrong, right? The average American drives like Tahoes and Suburbans. I thought this was fun. I really enjoyed it. Very fascinating, very weird seeing the differences. And I think it's kind of cool to see that visualized. I hope you enjoyed it as well. I appreciate you watching. My name is Ian. You're watching IWrocker. Until next time, y'all. Catch you later.